Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the mini weekend. I'm your host, Jack. Get into it, Mini. Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Wow, this is actually pretty good.
Is it just like a non-alcoholic beer, or
Pretty much. I mean, like it's its own line. Like there is no bureau that's alcoholic, but just like all the other non-alcoholic beers I've had on here, it tastes exactly like something that it tastes exactly like something you would drink if you were drinking a beer, like maybe like a higher end like Michelob or like a higher end like light beer. Like, don't get me wrong, this tastes better than like your Bud Lights or your Coors Lights,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's a pilsner, so it's a little more to it, but this is good. By the way, first time in 2025, Joey. Welcome, thank you for coming on. But yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before the podcast, and Tom Holland, of all people, founder, CEO, started this. They've kind of, their thing is born in London, crafted in America, enjoyed worldwide. And like you had kind of alluded to, the fact that this guy is this young and is sober and made this, I think is huge. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, like I said, something obviously a little bit different. A lot of the non-alcoholic stuff I've had on here, it's just been essentially non-alcoholic versions of Michelob or non-alcoholic White Claw or stuff like that. But something a little bit different. And if you are somebody out there that doesn't drink or is looking to cut back on your drinking, I recommend this. But why don't we just get right into it? Like I said, Joey, awesome to have you on. We kind of talked a little bit about the podcast, what we had in store for it. So why don't we just jump right in, and I will start with a question for you. This NHL season has clearly been fun to watch. It's kind of been a bit of a roller coaster ride again for us Wild fans, especially with Kirill's injury, being able to do as well as we have for the most part without Kirill. But just in a general sense, what's kind of surprised you the most now that I was looking at the standings before we got on here. We're essentially 2/3 of the way through the season. What's kind of surprised you the most up to this point into this season?
Of the Wild or the league?
The league, anything.
Capitals, 100%. No one expected them to do this, and the fact that Ovechkin's doing this still and 17 goals away from the record, it's kind of almost like poetic, and they're continuing it too. They weren't just a hot streak at the beginning of the year. They have continued all year just dominating teams besides the Wild. They beat them. But it's fun to watch, and I mean, who doesn't? It's hard to hate Ovechkin. So if he could somehow win another cup, I would love it.
It is. No, and it's crazy. I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna echo you. I was gonna say how good the Capitals have been, kind of twofold. How good the Capitals have been, and how big of a flop the Nashville Predators have been thus far. Yeah. Dan and I actually were doing kind of the preview kind of predictions for this NHL season, and we both kind of thought the Penguins and the Capitals would kind of both be in the same boat in terms of still trying to make another run with your old group, trying to figure out how you keep that old group intact and bring some young youth guys in there. And I think I speak for most people at the beginning of the season when I say you kind of anticipated Crosby, Malkin, Ovechkin to be up to their usual antics, because just like LeBron James, they've kind of beaten Father Time, these last couple years. But you had a lot of questions with who else was going to step up, because those three guys just can't do it. Unfortunately for the Penguins, other than those, the big name defensemen and those guys on the offense, nobody else has been able to get it done. But the Washington Capitals are doing it, by committee, which is super impressive.
Yeah, it really is. They're fun to watch this year.
And yeah, like I said, on the other side of things, the Nashville Predators, if they didn't make some of these signings in the offseason with Stamkos and some of these guys, I wouldn't be all that big on them, but this team has just kind of laid flat. What do you put into that?
It's hard for me not to be biased because I really don't like the Predators. So part of me's happy. But, I mean, when you look at, getting Stamkos, getting Marchessault, I don't know if I said that right, and then you still have, the Ryan O'Reillys. You still have Roman Josi and UC Saros. I think it's Andrew Burnett coaching. On paper, they are damn good. They just can't put it together. Granted, the two additions are older, especially Stamkos. He hasn't done what he used to be in a while.
No, but I think,
Yeah,
I mean, to your point, I think it's probably more important in the NHL to do more than just be a leader than in the NBA and the NFL. But I think at the very least, you expected, like you said, these old heads to, if nothing else, come in, contribute more than what they've been doing, at least a little bit, and kind of
you know,
these young guys under their wing and saying, "Hey, this is what to expect. This is what you got to do." And they've just kind of, for lack of better words, I mean, laid an egg. I'm looking up and down their roster here, and I don't think there is a single person. Nick Blankenberg, who's played 30 games on defense for them this year, is +10, and Adam Wilsby, 23 games, +6 or +3. They look like they are the only guys on the roster currently that aren't minus players.
yeah. And you would think with some of their players that they'd be so much better defensively, but I don't. Maybe it does go back to coaching. I like Andrew Burnett, but a lot of stuff comes back to coaching.
No doubt. Actually, talking about that plus minus too, I kind of thought of another question for you too, being a hockey guy, ex hockey player yourself. When you talk about like plus minuses, how much of that reflects on, how much of that necessarily reflects on your goaltender and your ability to keep the puck out of the net versus your poor play of not keeping the puck out of, the offensive zone? Or whose fault is that more? Is it more of a shit, like my I mean, shit, Jonathan Marchessault is -15. When you look at these plus minuses, is that typically more on the forward or the player themselves, or is that a reflection on the goals that they're just giving up?
Well, I think it's hard to say sometimes because if the goaltender, and this is kind of like almost the eye test, if they're playing well, stopping pucks, controlling rebounds, it's not as much on them because they could have poor defensive play in front of them. And then it has other times where the goalie is just not playing well and you're playing great defense. But I mean, I would say more of it goes on defensive play and almost coaching in a sense where it's like, what's your game plan on defense? Because you don't have to have the best goalie in the world to be able to block shots,
Right.
and you can scheme up defenses that cater to that. I mean, the Golden Knights didn't have a phenomenal goaltender in their Stanley Cup run. I think it was Aiden Hill, and they still
That's right.
blocked the most shots in the leagues. It's hard to say, but I would say a lot of it comes down to just defensive game plan.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And honestly, like I said, I mean, you can't help but think that that's more on the coach than it is the players,
Mm-hmm.
possibly, just from the standpoint of, like I said, I mean, I'm looking at, you got Philip Forsberg, Jonathan Marchessault, Roman Yossi, Stamkos, Ryan O'Reilly, Gustav Nyquist, Brady Sketchy. I can never pronounce his name right.
Oh,
Colton.
Shea.
Yeah, I mean, going up and down this, like, they have proven got Tommy Novak, like they have proven guys that have been on this team that have gotten stuff done and just nothing.
Oh, 100%. I mean, people were picking them for like winning the Central Division, being a Stanley Cup contender. And I mean, you never know. The season starts, I say, around like that, or starts getting going around that deadline, which I think is early March. So
Yeah, that's right.
it'll, it'll be interesting to see because if they're on the cusp, they might have a chance, especially with how the Wild are playing. I mean, I don't think we will. If we give up a couple more games in a row, it's gonna be a tough ride.
Yeah, well, and I mean that's not a bad segue there too. I mean that's the one thing you can't help but hold your hat on this Minnesota Wild team. Like I kind of said at the beginning of the season, I think the recipe for success for this Wild team is like losing games is a part of hockey, losing games is a part of sports, but making sure your losing streaks never like get too big. And I've always said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would say you know more hockey than I do, but in terms of hockey, like good teams versus great teams know how to nip their losing streaks in the butt and never really let themselves lose more than 2 or 3 games and are able to go on winning streak versus good teams. Good teams are just streaky. They win 8, they lose 5, they win 10, they lose 6. Like they're just streaky versus great teams. A couple of years ago, you had Boston who would lose an occasional 2 or 3 games in a row, but it wasn't that big of a deal because, right, like after they'd lose their 2 or 3 games, they'd go on a 12-game winning streak. So your 2 or 3 games you lost that maybe you got shut out one of them didn't look as appalling because you just rattled off 13, 14 wins in a row.
Yeah.
And I think so far, I mean, they've done that. They haven't really, at to be kind of in the middle of December going into Christmas there, they had their 4-game losing streak of the year. They really did a good job early in the year, I felt, of making those points count. I mean, we picked up points in what's that? We picked up at least 1 point in our first 11 games. And 14 games, 15 games into the season, we were 10, 2, and 3, and that's points in 13 of 15 games?
Yeah.
So.
Then we just got hit with the injury bug and just kept rolling through our team. I don't know. It's impressive to me that they were able to withstand it. When we were missing Kaprizov, Eck, Zuccarello at the same time, I believe, Faber, Brodin, Spurgeon, and we were winning games, that was unbelievable to see. So I think this team has that feel to them, the push to them. But I think right now, because they've had a couple games, I think they need Kaprizov back. They need that spark again. And I think once he comes back, be a lot better. Thankfully, with his injury, went the timeline. We have the Four Nations break, so it gives us a huge week. It'll be an interesting end to the year.
No, and it's always so weird, these NHL and NBA seasons. Like, you're so far into the season, but yet, a lot can happen in 30 to 28 games remaining in the season. And I mean, you just alluded to it too. I mean, they have a game against the Carolina Hurricanes on tomorrow night. And then the Islanders come to town on Saturday. And like you said, after that, they're not in play until the 22nd. And with Russia not being in the 4-team faceoff, it gives Kirill a couple of weeks there to kind of get his shit together and feel fully healthy. A lot of people are saying that by either that Colorado game on the 28th or Boston on March 2nd is when he could potentially be coming back. And I mean, again, like you kind of said too, I don't think we're in a terrible position here. I think the one thing I guess it's evened off now, but Winnipeg has 13 points on us, but they played an extra game. Dallas has a game in hand, but have 69 points, and we have 66. I mean, I think we're right there. And I think we'll get a Kirill back at a decent time, and everything should seem to work out.
Yeah, hopefully. It's all Wild fans have been waiting for next year, so I'd love to see him in playoffs, but I'm not expecting anything if they go on a run. I love it, but I'm just excited for future. Kaprizov's going to get like $14 million this summer, and I'm going to celebrate it. It's going to be better.
Well, and then it's going to be about, okay, now that we have money, sign him, and then go get pieces to put around this team too.
Yeah, get us a true dominant point getter of a center. Like, I love Eck, but he fits on that second line. Like, I think Rossi has potential, but right now he's still a little young. If you can get a really good forward, or I mean, ideally a center, but either that or maybe another defenseman.
Yeah, no, I remember, was it last offseason or 2 off seasons ago? Mark Sheffley was a free agent, and he was one of those guys that was touted as, hey, the Wild should sign this guy. I don't know if we didn't want to sign him or if he didn't want to come here or what happened, but I was like, that would be fucking money if we could get him.
Yeah, he would have fit perfect. I think it was, he re-signed, so I think it was just wanted to stay in Winnipeg, but maybe trying to get a better offer.
I gotcha. And then I'm looking it up here. Trade deadline in 2025, March 7th. Really quickly, kind of before we wrap up hockey here, what do you think of the state of the Wild, and do you anticipate us making really any moves?
I mean, it's Bill Guerin, so I always think he's going to be aggressive. Besides, really last year, because we were just did not play good at all. I could see him making a move. I would think it'd be something to get like a depth player, third line, like someone to replace Trenian because he hasn't been great this year. He's been better lately, or maybe try and, for the love of God, try and get a trade for someone to take Freddie Gaudreau.
Yeah.
Something. He'll do something. I don't know how. It's not going to be like huge, like the Fleury signing that one year or anything like that. But I think he'll do something that will be bigger than like just a fourth line addition, I would say.
Bigger than a fourth line addition, but not necessarily like not necessarily.
Oh, hell no. Like there was talks of Brock Nelson. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't even know if I would want it.
It'd be cool to see him finish his with him being a Minnesota boy. It'd be cool to see him finish up his career.
Yeah.
And
I mean, he would be a good center for Kaprizov, but he doesn't have a lot of 5-on-5 goals this year. Granted, the Islanders suck.
Well, and he's not.
We don't want to give up pieces.
Well, that guy's like not even on his back nine. Like he's on his back like 4-3 now. Like,
yeah, I don't want it to be like a Goligoski.
He's still good, but he's just not the player he used to be.
Oh, I don't want it to be another Goligoski trade. Because it got to the point where I was like, I'm starting to not like him because he's.
I'm convinced we only got that guy to bring him home to be like, hey, come play a year or two in the city, in the state where your whole family is. Like, dude, fucking get out of here.
I mean, he had like his first. I think he got at the deadline with the Fiala Kaprizov year. I think we got him at the deadline. He was decent actually that end of the year, and then a little bit into the next year. I feel like he was more of just kind of vibes, like the vet leadership, Stanley Cup winner, and I'm sure it actually probably helped.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. Well, so speaking of Luka, what the fuck?
That was such fucking bullshit. I don't have anything against the Lakers. It just annoys the shit out of me because he's so good. It's probably honestly good for the Timberwolves, but he's just like, I don't care if he's getting a little heavy. He drops 40 points a game. He's arguably the best player in the league. You can't trade that away. No disrespect to Anthony Davis, but he's not what he was.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. Kind of before I get into my thing, I was gonna make like a TikTok. I was kind of late to the game with all the news and getting like reaction wise. But I did manage to kind of come up with a couple because there were some people that kind of reached out. What's the equivalent? Because I'm sure you saw people all over TikTok too. What's the equivalent of this to?
Oh yeah,
or this and that and the other thing. And I got a couple for you, and I want to see what you think of my example. So people, in my opinion, that are like, okay, what's this in terms of the NFL? That would be like if the Rams were like, hey, we want Josh Allen and we'll give you Matt Stafford. Like,
yeah,
Josh Allen right now is 28 and arguably just hitting the prime of his career. And you're getting a Matthew Stafford who is a serviceable and good quarterback. He's been there, done that. But he's definitely, like we talked about, he's definitely on his back nine. He's not as good. Like, he wouldn't have been able to put up those numbers, and he definitely wouldn't have been able to bring that Buffalo Bills team to the AFC Championship game like Josh Allen did. In NHL terms, I want to see what you think of this. I was fucking proud of myself coming up with this one. In NHL terms, this would be like, because, and this is the other crazy thing about it too, Dallas went to the Lakers and said, hey, we'll give you him. Who do you think you want? So this would be like the Colorado Avalanche saying, hey, we'll give you Nathan McKinnon, our 29-year-old all-world guy. You know who we really want? Evgeny Malkin. Again, good. Yeah. Very similar. I think people forget Anthony Davis was an integral part in winning that 2020 NBA championship with LeBron James. So again, very similar to Evgeny Malkin. Veteran guy. He's been in the league for a while. He knows what it takes to get there. He's a good he's a good body. But he's way past his prime, and you're giving up a guy that's just entering, if not already in his prime.
No, that's a really good one, especially like with the double entendre being that young superstar phenom you don't trade going to play with one of the GOATs in their sport.
Or even in defenseman's term, that would be like Cale Makar for like Drew Doughty.
Yeah.
Then last one. You're gonna like this one. You're gonna like this one. I don't know if you're gonna completely get it, but being married with a wife and being on TikTok, I thought of, for any potential girl fans out there that want one, this would be like if Ulta was being bought by the dollar store. So There you have it.
That one went over my
Like,
head.
like Sephora, or like Ulta getting bought by the dollar store.
It's like the skincare brands.
Yeah, I mean these girls go to Sephora and Ulta, and from my understanding, you can buy like 2 or 3 of these. It's like mascara or whatever, and you can get like 2 or 3 of them, and it's like $50. It's like,
Yeah, fuck. What?
okay, yeah,
That's ridiculous. Are
yeah.
you
Like you
kidding
have
me?
this tiny bag, and there's like 3 things in there. You're like, oh, what was your bill? $15? No, 50. You're like, all right, well, thank God you didn't use my money.
Yeah. Good God, do you know how many wings you could get with $50? God damn.
Oh my God, I love that. But yeah, but you know what trade did not surprise me of this magnitude? That three-way trade between the Bulls, the Spurs, and the Kings. The only reason, like, don't get me wrong, that was still like a breaking news story because
Yeah.
you had all stars from all 3 teams kind of being swapped.
Mm.
If you're any more than a casual basketball fan, you know the names Zach Levine, and De'Aaron Fox have both been getting brought up in trade talks for the better
Yeah.
part of the last 2 years. So I
Mm.
think it was inevitable. It was a matter of where are they going to land kind of a
Yeah.
situation. But it'll be interesting to see that tandem of Chris Paul, De'Aaron Fox, and Wembanyama in San Antonio.
Yeah.
Fucking Greg
Yeah.
Popovich just getting 3 big names, boom, just like that.
I mean, I honestly kind of like that because I want to see some Wemby in the playoffs. I think he's pretty enjoyable to watch. He looks like he's going to break every bone in his body when he jumps, but
He does because he's
he's
skinny as shit.
just,
He's like Kevin Durant. Have you seen Kevin as
oh,
great as Kevin Durant is? Have you seen his legs? They're like
yeah,
twigs.
they look like they're going to snap every second. But don't speak of the future Timberwolf tomorrow, hopefully.
What? You think
I don't
Kevin
know.
Durant coming in?
I want KD on the Wolves.
I'm sorry, but there's no way we get Kevin Durant. Like the Phoenix Suns are actually owned and operated by a GM that has a brain, unlike the Dallas Mavericks. There's no way we're able to get Kevin Durant without giving up something. Like you're gonna have to give up Nas Reed. You're gonna have to give up probably Dillingham, who's been coming into his own. You're
Yeah,
gonna
you might
probably
have to give him
give up. And
Jaden.
that's the thing. We don't have a lot of draft picks, so
Yeah,
we'd have to probably give up. And we're in the second apron, so we would have to give up more money than we're taking in. So you'd probably have to look at trading Nas. You would probably for sure have to give up Randall. You probably
I
have
was
to
gonna
give up.
say they can have Randall.
I mean, you'd probably have to give up 4 or 5 of your top 7 players. And in my opinion, it's not worth it. Kevin Durant, he's great. He's gonna go into the Hall of Fame, but we don't need him. And I
Damn,
think,
he's so good.
yeah, he's good when he's like a lot of players. He's good when he has help around him. When it's just him kind of running the show, he's not really able to do much by himself.
I mean, he did almost beat the Bucks that year with his toe on the line when Kyrie was hurt and he was on the Nets. He almost beat him, and Bucks won the championship. But I
But
get what you're saying.
but
It
did you
makes
just say the word that you just were used?
almost. Well, it's because he has fucking huge feet, so his toes are just way too far on the line.
But yeah, like I said, I mean that the San Antonio, the move between the Spurs, the Spurs, who was at the Spurs, Bulls, and Sacramento Kings. I kind of like that for all parties. All 3 of them are kind of right there, and they were kind of teams that had a lot going for them, weren't completely shitty, but weren't amazing, and more or less were just trying to make moves to kind of get some new people in their atmosphere and kind of change things up just a little
Yeah.
bit. But holy shit, man! Part of me, I was watching because I knew he wasn't going to play because he's still battling a calf injury. But I watched the Laker Clipper game last night just to kind of see Luka on the bench, and part of that just didn't even feel real to me. Like
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. It is beyond me that like it's one of those things. Like if you want to trade the guy, fine. If you're not convinced, like because the rumor was they were convinced they were worried about his conditioning and they were worried about the super max that they were going to have to give him. And I get that; those are valid reasons. Like
Yeah.
he's very good, despite how good he is. Those are valid reasons to be concerned. But a guy like that, you need to shop around because I can think of 5 teams easily that would have traded the fucking house to get him and then to land guys in free agency around him. Like the Charlotte Hornets, definitely, the Charlotte Hornets would have given up a bunch of draft picks, LaMelo Ball,
Yeah.
San Antonio Spurs probably would have. The Washington. I mean, there's just it is beyond me that they didn't at least shop him. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. That was embarrassing. I think for the league, it's good that he's in LA because now obviously he's from Europe. You're going to get all these European people wanting to come over. You go to LA. You know,
Yeah.
the business side of it is going to be obviously great, but it makes you think like what was really going on there.
Yeah. They just could have gotten a lot more. It seems stupid, but I guess I'm not a GM, so
Shit, and that's what I meant to bring up that I haven't already. They gave him up, and they still got fleeced. Like they gave like they gave up more assets than the fucking Lakers did. Like because you traded Luka Doncic to the Lakers, you're probably thinking, oh, that 2029 draft pick is going to be awesome. The Lakers are going to be nowhere near the lottery in 2029. Luka will still be in the middle of his prime, and there's going to be 2 or 3 other stars in LA with him. They're not going to be anywhere near the lottery, so that pick's going to be useless. And then you got AD, who is great, but he is older, more injury prone, and less consistent. And Max Christie, who he looked decent on the Lakers, but he's a role player at best, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to be banking on Kyrie to carry the load, which I'm
He's
a
old
big
now
Kyrie
too.
fan. So, yeah. I mean, he's a phenomenal player. You have a vet in Klay Thompson. He's not as good as he used to be, but then you got Anthony Davis with, I forget the tall center bald dude, but they have Derek Lively.
Yeah. Why can't I think of his name? Or are you thinking of Kleber?
Uh,
Because they traded Kleber to Los Angeles too.
Maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
The Lakers got Markieff Morris, who LeBron's played with before and loves him and knows how to use him, Kleber, and Doncic.
Yeah, it's just annoying.
Like
Makes me sad.
one of the last things I will say before we move on is this trade has to go in the Hall of Fame and right up there as the worst trades ever dealt. And I'm gonna go as far to say it's right up there with the Wayne Gretzky trade for me.
Yeah, I think I don't hate it. I think it's still nothing. Still beats the Gretzky just because of who he was. But I mean, Luka he is phenomenal and has been so.
This came off of bringing this fucking team to the NBA Finals. Sure, this team made a boneheaded move by going after Klay Thompson instead of somebody younger than him.
Yeah,
and isn't playing their greatest basketball right now. But the NBA fucking finals, not the semifinals, not the conference finals, the NBA finals.
Yeah, and they beat a team pretty handily that just beat the reigning champs. I mean, they won a gentleman's sweep against the Wolves? Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
And Luka won them that series. I think he got MVP
single-handedly. I hate to admit it, but it was single-handedly him. Like there were a couple other guys that I can remember that came up with big time rebounds or big time, a basket here or there. But for the most part, that was 1,000,000% Luka Doncic. We just had no answer for him, and it didn't matter if Rudy Gobert had an arm completely to the ball, just not touching it. He was just making everything that series.
Yeah, I mean Kyrie was good that series, but Luka was the complete X factor. Even Jaden couldn't guard him.
No, I think no. To your point exactly, I think Kyrie was playing solid, but Luka was playing so good that if Luka was out and Kyrie was your best player, we probably do the opposite to them, and we probably would have beat them 4-1. If they had the exact same team, just no Luka and Kyrie played that way, it would have gone the opposite way, I think.
Yeah, no, I'd like to think so, but that series brought me a lot of misery.
It did. And I guess, okay, this will be the last thing I'll say. The last thing I'll say about that, though, and we talked about this because I believe it was you and me that did the preview for the NBA playoffs last year.
Yep.
It is very hard in the NBA and basketball in general, but specifically in the NBA. It's very hard to go from a team that didn't have many playoff expectations outside of maybe winning a game or a series, which they did in 2023, to being a contender. So again, very similar to what we're going to talk about in a little bit here with the Vikings. Last season, as painful as it was a success. If you would have told anybody in the state of Minnesota at the beginning of the season that that team was going to make it to the Western Conference Finals, I'm willing to bet at least 98% of those people would have said, you're fucking high.
Yeah.
There's just no way. They'll be good, but they're just not going to. I don't think a lot of people anticipated them to make that big of a leap. So I think, again, Minnesota fans need to have a little bit of grace and say, last year's season, it was awful how we lost and went out, but that was a hell of a season, and it was a fun season.
Yeah. Yeah. And then they trade away one of their key pieces.
Needed to happen. I think two things can be true. True things can be true. We're not playing the way we should be with Julius Randle, but I'm glad we got rid of Karl Anthony Towns, because Karl Anthony Towns was a big reason we lost that series against Dallas too. He was wildly inconsistent. He got into early foul trouble, made bad fouls early on in the game, wildly inconsistent. And I mean, Anthony, in my opinion, you take out Anthony Edwards' rookie year, Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns had 4 years. 4 years together, and the best that Anthony Edwards was consistently the one thing they had going for him. Karl Anthony Towns was doing this.
Yeah.
And at some point, you just have to make the move.
Yeah, in his defense, he was a huge reason why we beat the Nuggets. So
No,
I mean,
again, to the non-casual fans, I think you have to understand that to be the kind of player that Karl Anthony Towns is, who last year was second fiddle, for him to be the reason that or one of the key reasons we beat the Nuggets in 7 games, to the next 5 games being one of the biggest reasons we lost, I think is a perfect example of how inconsistent he is. Again, I can still appreciate everything he's done for this franchise.
Yeah.
But at some point, you gotta cut the cord. And I think
it was probably the right move with how much money it would have been too. So you live and you learn. At least we still have Ant.
We do. And could not be more excited about it. Now we get to the main course of the podcast. Super Bowl coming up, Viking season. Before we do, I want to give our good friends over at UNRL a quick shout out. I don't know if you saw this, but they have these new, they're called their ultra hooded long sleeve. These things are comfy as shit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have much or if you have any, but this athleisure stuff they have, and even their polos, so sick and so comfortable.
Oh yeah, I own a decent amount of Unreal stuff, and it doesn't miss. Everything's just super nice, and it lasts for a while too. Like it's not a wear and tear. Yeah, no, you have to wear them for a long time for them to really be screwed.
I mean, yeah, I don't think anything that I have of theirs have worn. Like, I still have everything I bought from them, even in my college days. And I think you can attest to this, too. One of the big reasons I love what they're doing in all their products and everything like that is not only are they comfy and are they kind of athleisure, which is obviously being a dad what I'm going for, but you can very much dress up and dress down like 90% of their stuff. Like, I have a couple of theirs. I have a couple of those, their concourse pants. And I'm not kidding you. I have worn those with like dress shoes and like a button up to my work training. And I've also worn them with my sandals and a sweatshirt going to build something at Home Depot with my kid. You can just like, my wife doesn't like that I call them this, but I call them like utility pants. Like, you can do whatever you want with them. Like, they're stretchy in the waistband, so like it fits like your ideal waist size, but you go up a couple pounds, you go down a couple pounds, they still work, and you don't have to break the bank and get a brand new pair.
Oh yeah, they're nice. Very nice.
I love them. Looks like they're going to be doing another thing with the Wolves and the Wild this year, so I'm super excited and pumped for that. Lastly, for them, go check them out, unrl.com. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and then they actually have a LinkedIn profile too, so go check them out. And let me know what you guys think we should be buying next, because I love buying clothes. I'm not going to lie. Well, here we are. Big enchilada. I guess just right off the bat, what are kind of your thoughts coming into this Super Bowl, and what are your biggest takeaways from the playoffs, from the NFL playoffs so far?
I mean, it's obvious, but it's Mahomes is the second best quarterback of all time, and if he wins this, he's having these conversations because they don't lose. They didn't score 30 points all year, and then one game they beat my boy Josh Allen. And God, did that make me just not want to cheer for the Chiefs. And I was actually going Eagles right when the Super Bowl matchup came out. But then their fans did what they do best and be insufferable and just make you hate and not cheer for that team, even though they have such likable players. So I want to witness greatness and I want to see the Chiefs win again, I guess.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you anymore. I think I was actually talking to you not long after or a little bit before the conference finals games came up, and a little bit after. And this really was the worst case scenario. Like, I can only think of two fan bases that rival just how bad Philadelphia Eagles fans are, and that's the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion. And really, what it comes down to is those are the three fan bases that, with how bad they are as fan bases, they make you root against their teams every single time, week in and week out. And I will say it right now on behalf of, I'm sure, you and every other Minnesota sports fan. Ever since that NFC Championship game in 2017, I lost all respect for, honestly, that organization and that fan base, because the fact that that fan base treated not just Minnesota fans, but just fans in general that were at that game cheering for any outcome other than the Eagles win, you would have thought they lost. They did not. And the fact that the Eagles organization never came out saying anything, hey, we apologize for fans, we apologize for this. You see that literally all the time in media. They didn't, and I can't stand them. I can't stand them.
Yeah, no, it's the right way to think, which sucks because I really want Saquon to get a Super Bowl, and I like a lot of their team. I think a lot of their defensive players are fun to root for. Some of their O line. I think Jalen Hurts. It's not the best thing ever, but I think he's a
pretty good QB.
He's a great role model for kids. He's a good quarterback. He can throw good balls. People act like he's the worst thing ever, and he can run the ball. Their fans suck.
No, they do. One of the things, though, I wanted to kind of talk about before we got too much into the Super Bowl, like we talked about earlier, though, this Vikings season. So, again, very similar to what I said when we were talking about, I think it was the Timberwolves from last year. Two things can be true at the same time. It was heartbreaking, the fact that we lost the way we did to the Lions, and then we lost the way we did to the Rams. Like, that was heartbreaking. With that said, this season was like a dream. I think there were so many people that had this team. Like, at the beginning of the season, our like the line for our total wins was 6.5. I told my brother, because he reached out to me, he's like, "Hey, 6.5 wins. What do you think?" I'm like, "Hammer that motherfucking over. Hammer it." Like, even looking before this even started, even knowing who our quarterback was, I told him, I said, there are 7 games on this schedule that, if nothing else, we will go 7-10. Even if that's fourth in the NFC North, we will win those 7 games. Yeah. And we won double that. And I'm curious to hear yours. So I'm going to ask you the question, but then I will give mine so that you have a second to think about what you think it was. What was your biggest takeaway from this team this season? And the biggest takeaway I had was just how true the statement is that we need an average quarterback at best in this offense. I mean, you look at a guy like Sam Darnold, and so many people just want to knock him down at the beginning of the season. He's ass. He's not going to do anything. Anybody else should be in that position. Yada, yada, yada. It's a perfect position for rookie quarterbacks. Yada, yada, yada. This guy won 14 games, and it was a perfect example of, we don't need Tom Brady. We need a decent quarterback that can get the ball into the hands of our playmakers, and that can literally be anybody. That's why I am very hopeful this upcoming season for our quarterback situation, because we obviously have J.J. McCarthy, who I'll say it right now, by the end of the season will be our starter and will be our QB1. Mm-hmm. But that's also why I am so comfortable with I don't really care what veteran quarterback we go out and sign to bridge until he's ready because fucking Jimmy Garoppolo could win us games. He's got JJ, he's got Jordan Addison, he's got Hawkinson. Say what you want about Johnny Munt and Josh Oliver. That might be the best 1, 2, 3 punch in tight ends when the ball's getting to them in football. And then you had behind you, you had Ty Chandler, who was serviceable. You had CJ Ham, who's always a dog. You had Jones, who was amazing. So it was just a testament to, look, okay, we didn't bring in Baker Mayfield. We didn't bring in Jared Goff. We're going to be fine.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I had like a couple takeaways where the first one, it's like, yeah, Justin Jefferson is obviously best receiver in the world, on pace to be one of the best of all time. But people slept on Jordan Addison, and I think this year he proved he could be a number one on more than half the teams. God, we're gonna have to pay him so much.
Oh yeah.
We have arguably the best offense in the league. Who knows what's gonna happen at running back this year? I mean, Cam Akers had times where he looked really good, but I mean, and then I think like it shows the NFL that close knit teams and good coaching can take you a long way, because it's not like going into the year Grenard and Van Ginkel were looked at as like, they're TJ Watt out there, which obviously they're not, but they had phenomenal defensive years. And we were missing arguably our cornerback one in Mikael Blackman, who got tore his ACL, so we'll get him back next year. Byron Murphy had a phenomenal year. Safety will be a little bit of a question mark, what we'll do, but I think it really comes down to coaching, and I think Kevin O'Connell, who didn't have a great last 2 games, is still one of the best coaches in the league, coach of the year.
Yeah. No, and truthfully, I don't think so many people were so quick to crucify Kevin O'Connell for those last 2 games. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was like that was none of his fault. But at the end of the day, that was mostly on Sam Darnold. Because if you look back on those games, there were wide open running lanes that during the regular season, he was taking those and getting 5 to 8, sometimes 10 yards. There were times when he was overthrowing and underthrowing throws that he made for 14 games that we won this year. And even like, my thing, even with Sam Darnold, is, I will repeat this until I'm blue in the face. It's not that he lost the last 2 games; it's how he lost those last 2 games. Our first 2 losses, he didn't look awful. He wasn't the best quarterback in those games, but he put up a fight. He made throws. We just weren't the better team, and I think the way that he lost those last 2 games cost him hundreds of millions of dollars.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the side where I don't want him again, Darnold. He gave me a great season. I'll root for him where he goes, but it showed his inexperience with playoffs and arguably the biggest regular season game of all time. And I mean, I remember watching some games mid-season and seeing sacks he would take where he didn't throw the ball away, and kind of looked at him like, this isn't a thing you want a quarterback doing.
No, and even in some of those. Sorry, continue.
No, that was where I was.
No, 100%. And I was going to say, I think you look at some of those games. Like, I'll be the first to admit, some of those wins, that one against the Bears, where we let them come back and we barely won in overtime. We barely beat the Colts. We barely beat the Jags. Like, they weren't always pretty wins, but throughout the entire season, he showed us, okay, he shows up in big moments. So for a guy to continue to show up in big moments and be a big player for us, to just completely drop the ball in the 2 biggest games of arguably your career, and you don't do anything. Like, I'm not gonna lie, if we would have, I'll pull them up right now. I'm not gonna lie, if we would have lost those, even in that LA game, even if we lost that 24-27, 23-27, 21-27, and maybe we lose that Detroit game 28-31, or even 21-31, and he doesn't have those turnovers, maybe there is that conversation of, okay, what's our number? Obviously, you're not going to overpay for a guy like this that is still going to be a rich quarterback. But what's the number we're going to set that, hey, if we can get him, great. If not, hey, we're happy with him walking away. But the fact that he dropped eggs shows me that I'm sorry, you're, agree to disagree.
Yeah, I mean, the good way to look at it is just similar to the Wild, where it's bright up from here. I have faith in JJ McCarthy. The fact that he's going to be a rookie learning under Kevin O'Connell, who we saw what he just did with Sam Darnold. Even if Daniel Jones starts next year, again, Kevin O'Connell, I think we have a bright future. We have the greatest wide receiver in the league. It's not even a question. I really think we'll be okay. We'll just have to see how this. It's just banking on JJ McCarthy really being as good as I think he can be.
No, for sure. And I think one of the things I wanted to look up here too, I think people forget just how much cap space we have. So I pulled up the numbers. There are only 6 teams in the league that have more cap space than us. We right now have just over $61 million in cap space. New England holds the number one spot with 123 mil. But here's the thing, like looking at these 7 teams, there's only 2 teams that have more cap space than us that I can think that maybe have a bit more allure than us. And that's Redskins, who have 82 million cap space, and the Chargers, who have 64 million cap space. If you're a good player and you want to win, I don't think signing with New England, Las Vegas Raiders, Arizona Cardinals, or the Chicago Bears is the greatest decision. But if you're an NFL player just looking to get a bag, I mean, by all means, I'm not going to judge.
Yeah. No, I think we have more allure to sign with than the Chargers. They had a good year. I just think when you look at what we have on offense, if you're an offensive player, you want to go here. And then we have Brian Flores, who we've seen what he's been able to do. Commanders is obviously, I'm happy for their fans.
Oh,
Jaden Daniels, good.
Sure. I actually said at the beginning of the year, Chicago was going to regret not taking Jaden Daniels over Caleb Williams.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Daniels was my number 1 in the draft. I knew we weren't going to get him, but I wanted him.
But yeah, truthfully, I think we have some, to your point, I think that safety position, I think you got to find a way between Byron Murphy Jr., who's actually technically a cornerback, between him, Bynum, and Metellus, you got to find a way to re-sign preferably all 3 of them. For sure, 2 of them. If I had to prioritize it, I would probably say sign Metellus and Bynum, because there are a couple other solid cornerbacks that are going to be on the market that could possibly come. But I think if you re-sign those 2 guys, Harrison Smith, it sounds like, is going to come back. You kind of solidify that back end, and then you can go to some of these bigger name cornerbacks, interior offensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, and say, look, we don't have a ton of money, but look at what we're working with, and I think it would incentivize quite a bit of people to come.
Oh, yeah. I mean, especially on, like, if we needed a safety on that side, where look at what Flores can let you do. He can let you roam, blitz. I mean, it's definitely hard to think that they won't re-sign all 3 of them. I
just don't know, because, again, we have, and it's funny to look at this and say 61 million isn't a ton. It comes down to, okay, how much are they going to be looking for? Because if all 3 of them are looking for 15 mil a year, that's 45 mil right there. And then all of a sudden you're down to 16 million left in cap space, which I don't know that they're all worth that, because Cam Bynum, as good as he was this year, he's still pretty young. But yeah,
you just kind of get I was just going to say, hopefully they can take a team-friendly deal.
And I was going to say,
that'd be awesome.
You can't help but feel when you have a guy like Quitey, Kevin O'Connell, Brian Flores being there, knowing what you're getting yourself into. You can't help but hope that they're willing to maybe take a little bit less than they know their market worth to run it back with a better quarterback. Excuse me.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting offseason, that's for sure. I'm excited to see the moves. I hate that football's already done, but at least we have the Super Bowl.
I know. Hey, don't get too upset. Only 213 days until the Vikings 2025 season. But hey, who's counting, right?
I usually like the little break before the draft, but then when the draft happens, then I start getting really back into it and getting pumped up.
But yeah, before we go, we should dive into this Super Bowl for a little bit. One thing I wanted to get your take on, the tush push, brotherly shove. I don't know, talk to me about it. What's your take on it?
It annoys me to the sense of it's boring to watch and it works, but I also don't hate it in the way of people have tried to stop the Eagles. They can't do it. People can stop the Bills, Josh Allen on a 4th and 1. They can stop Sam Darnold on it. You can't, if you can stop it. I mean, you saw when the Commanders were on the goal line, they kept jumping over. Eagles do it better than anyone, and I get to the point of it. The guys pushing from behind is a little annoying with you can't do that on defense. So I get that point of it maybe, getting banned, but I just think it's a football play. If it's not illegal, just try and stop it.
Yeah. No, I mean, you bring up some good points, but I'm actually super, super excited because a lot of the times that we have you on, you and I don't disagree on like hardly anything if much. But this, my friend, I disagree with you on. And I'll tell you why. One of the first things I thought of this year, there wasn't a ton, but last year in the 2024 season, there were between 5 and 12 nice sized concussions and injuries that came out of that play. That, and I think defenses now more than ever are getting more frustrated and frustrated and frustrated than anything before because they can't touch quarterbacks. They can't hip drop. They don't know how to tackle. They don't know what they're going to get called for, what they're not going to get called for. I can put my hand on a guy's helmet to help bring myself to him, but I can't grab his face mask. I can't do this. What can I do? So the fact that playing defense is so egregiously hard, and the fact that offenses are able to, like you just said, push. I was going to, and I talked about this and I thought about this earlier today. If there is a way you can change the rules on the defensive side of things, by all means, I don't think they'd be able to. So I think they should just take it out of the game. Excuse me. I think, and I'm going to preface this. I know I said some things earlier about the Eagles. My stance on the tush push has nothing to do with the Eagles, even though watching that time, that Washington Philadelphia game, that was so fucking hard to watch.
Yeah.
And the fact that that ref came out and said they have been warned if they do this again, we're allowed to give them 6 points, told me everything I need to know about the tush push and that it should be taken out of the game. Look, Jalen Hurts is great. If you're great, run it by yourself. Hand it off to Saquon. Get a first down on a third and inches, fourth and inches. Do it any other way than getting assistance from somebody pushing. If you're that, like, show me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. I hate so much that, I mean, no one, I feel like, knew about that rule. And then they just bring it up, and it's just, I think it's the biggest bullshit ever. You can't just give someone a score. That's ridiculous.
And, and actually, I didn't like it, but I wasn't as passionate as I was now until I heard that come out of the official's mouth. As soon as I heard that, I was like, get this shit out of the league.
Yeah.
Like, there are some, and I was reading some articles today, getting ready for the podcast. There are some presidents of football operations, some owners, some GMs that look at that as essentially a free play. And their whole stance, and I think I texted you this earlier, their whole stance on why they want to spearhead getting this out of the game is because it's like, what's like all of these plays? Like, you have to catch a ball. Look at Mark Andrews. You didn't catch a ball, okay, you lose a game. You catch a great ball, great. You win a game. There is no talent. There is nothing really that goes into that play other than push as hard as you can. We don't need to go down this rabbit hole. Josh Allen did get that first down. He did get that first down. But I just think it has no place in the game. I think if the NFL really takes a look at this play, and if they care about players' safety and health as much as they do, they would have gotten rid of it before this season, truthfully.
Oh, yeah. And then you look at, like, the Chiefs don't do it because Mahomes got hurt once, and yet they still get touchdowns and fourth down conversions. So it's like it takes a fun and the enjoyment of watching these unbelievable athletes perform and, see the touchdowns how they should be almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe because the whole getting 6 points is complete bullshit. Because if they had just 4 downs and they didn't do a tush push and they did something else, QB sneak, and they get stopped, you're going to just award them it because the guy jumped over the center or something. It's ridiculous. Seems like they make up rules.
Well, and it makes more sense in my mind to get rid of it makes more sense to just do one fell swoop. Get rid of the play rather than, hey, offenses, you're allowed to, okay, we're making some changes. Now you're allowed to do this. You're not going to be able to do this anymore. And then, okay, now defense. You can do this, but we're going to give you this freedom here, but not there. And you can do this there. And No, just make it simple. One fell swoop, get it out of the league.
Yeah, definitely.
But also with that, I think any penalty that's worth 15 yards should also be always reviewable. Like if there's a chance a guy got a face mask, review it. If there's,
Yeah,
it's going to be tough to review roughing the passer, but it's pretty cut and dry. It's like, look, if he landed with his body weight on top of him, um,
or like every team gets one super challenge per game where you get to challenge anything,
well, and
even if
that's
it's like a DPI, like you can challenge that, but then you can't use it for the rest of the game, or maybe a certain amount throughout the year, something that gives them. I mean, I know we're homers, but the Rams face mask on Sam Darnold, and then his getting his face mask against the Colts when he fumbled. It's bullshit that things like that can affect games.
no doubt. And honestly, I can't remember if I brought this up or not, or if I had this on the tab to talk about in the off season. I don't think because right now I think challenges are where they should be. You get 2 challenges, and then you get a third challenge later in the game if you won your first 2 and if you still have a timeout left. Don't change that. Make anything challengeable because, and I think a lot of it gets a little bit misconstrued because I think when most people hear that they think, "Fuck, this game's going to take forever." It's not because
Yeah,
you have to be strategic about it. There's maybe in that Rams game you don't throw a flag for that intentional grounding because you're not sure if it's going to get called or not.
yeah,
But maybe later in the game when you got called for roughing the passer or you get called for no, what was it? Later in the game you challenge that he didn't grab his face mask, his hand was just on it.
yeah.
Get that. So keep the challenges the way they are, but I can't remember who I was talking to, but they made an excellent point. You should either let everything be challenged or nothing be challenged and just get rid of it. And I think I stand by just letting everything being able to be challenged.
I wouldn't hate that. I really wouldn't.
All right. Well, before we go, why don't we get into the nitty gritty of it a little bit here? Like we've talked about, this podcast has been leading up to the entire night. Super Bowl, what is it, 59, right? I think
Something like that. I can never read
Super
the
Bowl, right.
number.
Super Bowl 59, New Orleans, #1 Kansas City Chiefs taking on the #2 Philadelphia Eagles, 5:30 p.m. Kansas City is 1.5 favorites. What do you like in this game? How do you see it going? And finish it off with your prediction.
I mean, it's gonna be a good game. It's gonna be a dynasty team, best quarterback in the league versus the most talented roster, the best running back in the league. I think it's gonna be a really good game. I see it being high scoring, so the over will be placed. And no one wants to root for the under in the Super Bowl. I mean, what are we doing? But I see it being high scoring. I see Saquon breaking off a big one. I kind of see it going like maybe Eagles leading into half, leading into the fourth quarter, and then the Chiefs doing what they do best, and Travis Kelce scoring a huge touchdown, or DeAndre Hopkins, which would be a sweet story, wins like a game-winning touchdown.
Yeah.
I think the Chiefs are winning and at like the -1.5. Prop bet Saquon longest rush. I think it's at like over, or the line's at 23.5 or something like that. I love that.
Over?
Yeah, I love the over on that.
I like it. I like it. And I think the only thing you left out, final score.
30 this goes against what I was saying about Hopkins, but 34-31 the Chiefs. I can't do it, Chiefs. I have to. It's
30,
Mahomes. You can't bet against him.
right. No, I like it. I obviously in a perfect world I'd like for the Super Bowl just not to happen. And okay, let's go on to next season and let's just keep talking about the Chiefs that went back to back. It needs to get played, obviously. But yeah, one of the things I will agree with you on, that spread. I know I've been doing a lot of my picks based off of the spread in the playoffs so far. I don't really like betting against the spread when it's this close. It's just like if I'm gonna bet on a game that's that close, I'd rather just put money on the money line, truthfully. But I'm not going to do the money line. I'm just like you. I'm going to take the total. The total or the over under. The over under is set at 48.5. Which,
It's
if this were a
that's
26-24 game, that would be over.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Which
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it easily could, based off the last Super Bowl they played against each other. The Chiefs haven't been the Chiefs of the last 5 years this year, but it's Patrick Mahomes, it's Andy Reid. They're gonna score points. That's what they do.
Like I thought I looked at this earlier, maybe I didn't. The fact that this over, like the over under for points, is not somewhere in the 50s blows my mind.
Yeah,
It blows my mind.
I mean,
Um,
maybe it's a testament to their two really good defenses. That honestly probably could be it because
but
you
again,
have
the
Chris
Kansas City
Jones,
Chiefs have not had a good defense this year.
but they have Chris Jones, who is
Yeah.
if someone can stop the tush push, beat Chris Jones, and if someone can stop Saquon, I don't think anyone can, but he can tackle him for a 10-yard gain rather than a 70.
Yeah, no doubt. This is definitely going to be. This is definitely a battle of the Titans. You got Mahomes, like you were talking about, Mahomes going up against Hurts, Kareem
Mm,
Hunt and Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, and Hollywood Brown, Devontae Smith, and Rashid Rice. They got Xavier Worthy, who's fast as hell. But I hate that I'm actually going to say this, but I think Travis Kelce is going to be an X factor in this game. I think AJ Brown, and I mean they're not obviously going to be playing each other, but you think about their counterparts like Kareem Hunt and Saquon Barkley match up decently. Barkley's obviously better in the explosive run department. Kareem Hunt is more of like your workhorse. He's going to get you he's always going to get you at least a couple
like
yards.
pound the yards out, yeah.
Yeah, you always have to keep in mind that Mahomes and Hurts can take off at an instant. AJ
Mm-hmm.
Brown, AJ Brown and Hollywood Brown are amazing. Rashid Rice and Devontae Adams is awesome. I think it's going to come down to wide receiver 3 and their tight end. I do like Goddard. He's a serviceable tight end.
He's better than serviceable. Don't disrespect my boy. He's been my
Oh,
fantasy tight
but
end for like 3 years.
he's not a top 3 tight end in the league like Travis Kelce is. He's just not.
Yeah, that's
He's
fair.
just not.
Yeah.
And it pains me to say that because since he started dating Taylor Swift, I'm fucking over him. I'm over the whole fucking team if I'm being completely honest. But yeah, like I said, I would tend to agree with a lot of what you said. I'm definitely taking the over 48.5 points in this one. I got this one being a shootout as well. I think it's going to be I'll go 41-38. I think it's just going to be back and forth. I think the league and both teams are going to want to put up points. I think both defenses will probably have one or two drives where they're like, holy shit, that's why they got here, because they were able to get a stop or two.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately we're just going to be seeing a lot of Travis Kelce, a lot of Saquon Barkley, Devontae Smith, all those guys. But once again, I would agree with you. I think this goes 41-38 in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs. And for the next year, we have to listen to these bitch ass fans talking about a three-peat, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I mean, no.
And truthfully, the more I think about it, because kind of leading up to this, after this matchup was set, I can't help but think I'm like, this is who's the better of two evils in this one? And the more I think about it, as much as I don't like the Chiefs because they're like, the Yankees of the early 2000s, the Tom Brady New England Patriots,
Yeah.
their fan base really isn't all that annoying. They're not really in your face. Yeah, they talk when they're winning, and they're nowhere to be found when they're losing. But at least they're not disrespectful.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they definitely gained fans in the past couple years that are like the usual social media fan, like the fucking Lions fans. I don't need to get into it,
No.
but they're like that where they've had a huge, ginormous fan base for so long that it's not. And so is the Eagles, but Chiefs don't can steal people's hats and throw shit at you.
Well, there's like after the Eagles after the Eagles game when they beat the Packers, there were like half a dozen Eagles fans that got arrested after that game.
Yeah.
Like in the stadium. What are you guys doing? You won the game. You won.
Yeah, and it's like there's a difference between being a passionate fan base, which a lot of them are, but being passionate is not the same as being a dickhead. Like there's passionate fan bases everywhere, but they don't treat their other fans like shit. There's people like that in every fan base though, but the Eagles are just almost
No doubt.
Yeah.
There's definitely bad apples everywhere you go.
I'd rather go to a game wearing Viking stuff in Lambeau than in, I don't remember what they're in Philadelphia. I forget their stadium name.
Lincoln Financial, I think. Actually.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, that's what we got for you guys tonight. Any last words before we go?
Go Saquon, I guess, and just witness greatness. Just realize you're witnessing greatness on Sunday, and don't bet against Mahomes. You'll have a better night if you don't bet against Mahomes.
No, true. And truthfully, I just hope it's a good game. If it's sorry, not a good game. I hope it's a close game because if it's like 24-3 at halftime, I'm gonna turn it off.
Yeah, if it could be like the Commanders Lions game with it's just back and forth, a ton of scoring. I don't want it to be like the Rams Patriots Super Bowl. That was horrible.
No, it's fun every once in a while to see good, solid play on both sides of the ball. Every once in a while. But I think I speak for most of football fans when I say you usually in big games, not just the Super Bowl, but just in big games, you at least want like a 21 to like 24 point game or something.
Yeah, I mean, life's too short to not cheer for or bet the under, so don't bet the under.
Hell no. Well, appreciate you coming on. I'm not super excited about the Super Bowl, but it's one of those things that, you gotta watch, and it'll be nice to see. I can't even pretend to like either of these teams. It's going to be awful watching this game, but it is football. It is football, and it's the last football game we have until the end of August.
Yeah, I mean, cherish football while you can.
Amen. All right. Well, with that, till next time, Minnie.